Hi guys, we are going to be, today we're going to be making a grid, a circular grid, so that you can make your Sol LeWitt inspired drawings. So you're going to need a couple of tools to make your circular grid. You are going to need just some plain white paper. You'll be making your drawing on this. I've got just printer paper here. You'll need a pair of scissors. You will need a piece of, like a thin piece of cardboard, like whatever kind of cardboard is in cereal boxes would be great. A piece of cardstock would be fine. Just a really, really thin piece of cardboard. Like I said, a cereal box would be great. This was in the bottom of my grocery bag. So just any old little piece of thin cardboard is perfect for this. If you don't have the thin cardboard, a little strip of paper does fine. I did this with a little strip of paper. It's just a little easier with the stiffer cardboard. You'll need a magazine, just an old magazine, something you don't want because you're going to poke a hole in it to keep from poking a hole in your table or whatever else while you're making this project. If you don't have an old magazine, a piece of corrugated cardboard, so the thicker cardboard like box cardboard is fine for this too. You'll also need something to poke a hole with. A needle is fine. A push pen is great. That's what I'm going to be using as a push pen. This would be what I would recommend if you have it, but a needle works fine too. A pen, just any kind of pen that you can poke through something would be fine. A small nail, if you've got like any kind of tack, works great for this. A push pen is my personal favorite go-to for this sort of thing, so that's what I'm using. If you've got one, I would recommend this. Okay. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do is well, I guess let me show you some of the end results first, and then we'll work backwards from there. So this is kind of what I'm going to want in the end. You can see it is a circular repeated pattern, concentric circles, and all the way out to the edge of the paper. It's got some lines that come out, radiate out of the center point. This is what you need for your Sol LeWitt drawing. So how do I get here? All right, so this is a standard 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. What I wanted to do first was to make the paper square. So there's an easy way to do this. You take your paper, okay, and then you'll fold it at one of the points here. Point. Okay. So that's what it looks like. I took basically like my bottom edge here, my bottom edge, and I folded it up so that it touched exactly across this top edge. And that leaves me with a triangle, and then there's another little flap of paper over here. So to get a square, I can just trim off this little flap, this extra flap. Okay. This is extra, so I can just put it aside. All right. So now if I unfold this, it's a square. I actually need to know what the center point of this paper is. So I've got it folded already here. If I fold it in half one more time, make sure to line it up, line these points up carefully. Okay. If I unfold it, it's going to be like a big X, and the center of that X is the center of the paper. So I know the center of my paper is right here where I made this dot, okay? So I'm gonna set this aside for just a minute. All right, so I know that as I start my circular grid, okay, I'm going to need to make concentric circles. So that means they're all spaced out from the same center point. So I'm always starting with this center point, and the circles just get bigger and bigger as I go out, okay? So one way to do this would be to do it with a compass. I did not want to assume that you guys had a compass, which if you do, please feel free to use it for this. But this is a simple way to make concentric circles if you don't have a compass. So this is where your piece of cardboard comes in. So what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to poke some holes along. You're going to want to make a line of holes right down this center, down the center of this piece of cardboard. If they're a little bit off a center, it's fine. It doesn't matter if they're a little bit off. They'll work even if they are. Important thing to know is, you know, if you make a lot of space between your holes, you're going to have more space between your circles. If you make a smaller space between your holes, you'll have a smaller amount of space between your circles. So this is a bigger gap here, bigger space between my holes, smaller gap here, smaller space between my holes. So you know, it is, I'd like to try and play with, you know, placement here and experiment with where I'd like to place my holes along this cardboard. So I've got my push pin, and I am going to make a series of holes right down the center of this piece of cardboard. So this one is going to be my first. Now this is going to be like what I attach to the center of this paper, okay, to make all my other lines. So let's see. So I'm going to make my next one just a little bit further down, okay. I'll make my next one quite spaced out from the previous one. I want to have some rings that are close together and some rings that are far apart. It's going to give my drawing some variety. Next one is close together. We'll do another one close together, and then one farther apart. Like I said, if this is not perfectly straight, it's okay. It's going to work out, even if it's not 100% straight down the center. Let's do another spaced out one, just to give some variety. And a close together one. And you can make the spacing between these holes whatever you would like it to be for your drawing. You can make several of these, in fact, and try them out for different drawings. You're going to need to make at least 2 pieces of circle grid paper. We'll use one for our first drawing that we make together, and then you'll use one in the next class. So you'll need to make at least 2 of these. You can make more if you like, but you'll need at least 2. All right. So now you can see I've got holes, differently spaced holes all the way down this piece of cardboard. All right. So here's where my magazine comes in. Everything that I'm going to do on top of my magazine, because if I were to push, of course, this push pin into my tabletop, it would put a hole in my tabletop. I don't want to do that. So I want to use my magazine to protect my table. Okay. So I'm going to take my piece of cardboard, and I'm going to find the centermost, or the hole closest to the edge on one. So I decided this would be my center point. So I can take and poke my push pin through this. This will help me see and place it on the center of the drawing on the point that I made before. I'm going to poke right through that, and I'm going to push hard not too hard, so that it goes right into my magazine. If I were to push hard enough, I suppose it could go through the magazine, which I don't want it to go through the magazine and into the table again. I just want it to go right into the magazine. And I'm basically going to use this as something that I can pivot around when I make my drawing. If you don't push this in far enough, it might pop out. It's okay if that happens. You just have to put it back in carefully. It's not the end of the world by any means. It probably will happen while I'm making this video, actually. It helps if you are able to kind of push down on this while you're doing the rest of your drawing. You know, if it does pop out, it's not a big deal. You can just kind of move it back to where you were before. So I've got a mechanical pencil for this because the point is pretty narrow, and I can easily fit a point down in to one of these holes that I've made. Okay, so let me show you how this works. I'm going to push down on my push pin through my paper and through my piece of cardboard. My cardboard can move all the way around on my paper. All right, so I'm going to put my pencil through one of these holes, and I am going to turn it around. Okay, that might be hard for you to see. Maybe you see a little bit of my circle coming up there. Let me try a hole that's a little further out. So I'm going to go to the next hole, put my pencil in there, and I am going to turn it around. Okay, so you can see that's made a circle. What's happening is I've got a center point here with the push pin, and this circle is allowing me to rotate around that center point 360 degrees evenly and make a circle. This does sort of what a compass does, if you've used a compass before in math class. Okay. When I was young, I had a Spirograph toy. And the Spirograph, there was a toy part of the toy that was kind of like this. You put a hole through a stick and make a circle like this. It's a pretty ancient way to make a circle, long before they were very fancy tools. This was a reliable way to do it. So you can do something like this. You could also, as long as you are keeping the same distance from a center point, you know, and able to move around at 360 degrees, you can make a circle. So I can go in the opposite direction too, if I chose to. There we go. All right, good. I could alternate directions. Doesn't make a difference as long as it's staying, as long as the center point is staying still, we're all good. Sorry, I just knocked my camera a little bit there. You know, you could, I guess, in theory, keep the point still and rotate the paper. I'm afraid that if I do that, I'm going to pull my push pin out of the middle. But that would, in theory, work. Maybe you're more adventurous than I am, would like to try that. Certainly could. You could also, if the movement of the paper is bothering you, if the degree to which the paper is moving is bothering you, you could tape your paper down. I wouldn't put a ton of tape on there, maybe just a couple little pieces to hold it still. As it happens, I didn't have any tape at my desk today, so I went without doing that. And so my paper's moving a little bit, but nothing that I can't handle. When you get out here to the edges and you're going like on and off the page, because you see my circles going off the page, that's a little tougher because if you're not careful, it wants to catch the edge of your paper and wrinkle it up. Just be careful when you're going on and off the page. Be kind of conscious that you're going off the page and coming back on. so you're not tearing your paper. Okay, good. I've got one more to make, it looks like. Yeah. Okay. You can pick your pencil up a little bit if you need to. If you've gone off the page and need to come back on, you can always touch up any marks that get a little weird in the process. Okay, great. So now I've got my circles. They're concentric circles. I can pull out my push pin and I can put this little tool aside that I've made. And you can see I've got a page full of concentric circles, okay? So to be able to use this as a grid, there's one more step, and that's going to be to add some lines that come out from the center point, some straight lines that come out from the center point, almost making like pie slices. You can, if you bought a piece of grid paper, of course this would be really regular. This would be very mathematical, like it would be evenly spaced. But for the sake of this drawing, I think you can just make them as you'd like to make them. You can make, if you've got a ruler or a longer straight edge, you can go all the way across the paper and make sort of like pizza slices on this drawing. Or, you know, maybe you don't have a ruler and you've just got a straight edge that you cut off of a piece of cardboard. That's fine. That's what I've got to use as my straight edge. So that's what I'm going to use today. So I'm just going to make a couple straight lines coming off the center, going to the edge of the paper. Again, you know, if this were grid paper that we were buying in the store, this would be sort of evenly spaced. If you'd like to make that choice to make yours very evenly spaced, you certainly could. But for me, I'm just going to make some lines that are more random coming from the center point. I am going to make sure they go from the center point and that they're straight. Okay, so I ran out of straight edge here. What I can do to continue this line is just slide my straight edge down some. Okay. And mine are not perfectly spaced, and that's okay. I don't need them to be perfectly spaced for this drawing. I just need to have some radiating lines coming from that center point. So I'm going to skip over this crease line. I guess I could just draw down the crease if I wanted to there carefully. I'm going to skip over that one, make it a little different from the one before. Maybe since I know that mine are not going to be evenly spaced, I'm going to give some purposefully narrow pieces and some purposefully wide pieces, just like I did some narrow and wide parts of this grid, the circle grid. I think I am going to do this corner here. So, use my straight edge. Now this is just a piece of cardboard. If you've got a ruler, you could certainly use that. Or, you know, another piece of copy paper could be fine as a straight edge. It's got a little bit of stiffness to it. It makes it a little easier to use as a straight edge. But use what you have available to you. Okay, I'm going to do one more little piece coming to the center here. Okay, there we go. So here's my circle grid that I'm going to use for my Solo-It drawing. Here's one. You need to make at least 2 different circle grids. So you'll need to make another. If you finish one, you know, make at least one more. I would recommend, you know, use a different pattern for making your rings. Use a different, you know, type of spacing pattern here. Play around with different spacings here. Your drawing should look kind of like this. You know, everybody's is going to be a little different, but you should have concentric circles coming from one point in the middle with lines that radiate from a central point out to the edge of your paper. Okay? That's what you'll need. All right. So again, you'll need to make 2. Make sure that you bring those to class tomorrow. Have a good day.